Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use. No doubt starts now. This is the broadcast for August the 14th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is our one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, and to promote God, family, and country, and to do so on your radio in the traditions of our founding fathers. Yes, indeed. The incredible checks and balances brilliantly put in place by the founding fathers in the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America, absolutely our guide and the solution to the problems we face in America, ladies and gentlemen. There's so much to cover, so little time. Welcome to the show. As you know, we reject revolution. We stand for peaceful restoration of the greatest country on the face of the earth. There's so much to cover. Wow. Brian Rust will be with me here in a little bit to cover the Honest Money Report. That'll be fantastic, by the way. And over the past 50 years, for 3 generations, the Rust family has been helping people understand precious metals. freewatercoinco.com, their website. That's freewatercoinco.com. I trust Brian and recommend him highly to you as well. All right, there's so much to cover. First, I guess the White House considering inviting Zelensky to the Alaska summit, right? That's October the 15th, so that's tomorrow. The Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump are supposed to meet. WorldNet Daily with that piece. What I find interesting about this whole thing is, they're thinking about inviting Zelensky. I don't really see how you can possibly move forward with a real discussion without Zelensky there, personally. You say, well, no, Sam, we're going to set up the framework. But you've been funding Zelensky big time. You even got caught on a phone call, President Trump, with Zelensky saying, hey, what if we lob some missiles right into Russia? Could we make that happen? And then you want to sit down with Vladimir Putin? I just don't see how you manipulate both sides of this. See, this is where, in my opinion, if you're not very careful, you're going to step in it. I know he's the art of the deal guy. I get it, and I hope it turns out well. And I think Donald Trump usually pulls, the rabbit out of the hat. I get it. He's very, people mock Trump and say, oh, he's not that smart. He talks on a 4th grade level. And that's what they tried to say in the early days of his presidency. Now they understand that he's wicked smart. Now that they understand that he's absolutely schooled them at every turn. Now they realize they've just underestimated him so much it's not even funny, right? But at the same time, you go, you realize he schooled them at every turn. Every time they just kind of mocked him, thought he wasn't very smart, thought, oh my gosh, he doesn't, speak well. He bullies people. He's like a little kid. He's outsmarted every one of them. So I don't doubt that when Donald Trump goes and meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin, that they might be able to come up with something that can improve things. And I pray that's true. I'm not opposing President Trump here. I pray that's true. But I also am wise enough to say, listen, it is not going to do very well to leave Zelensky out of this. Short term, you might get a gain. But long term, you're going to engender this principle the CIA documented called blowback that really highlights, hey, you meddle in the affairs of nations, and eventually, you're not going to be liked. You're not going to be wanted. You're going to be hated. And America is starting to be hated more and more and more around the world. I think that was mentioned yesterday by some of our guests on the show, talking about, America's hated around the world. And we are, because we just meddle in the affairs of others. I mean, imagine there's a war between the Ukraine and Russia. Instead of Trump saying, let's get together, can I please play the mediator, would love peace in your region, would love to help, would love to, see if we can't broker some kind of a deal. Trump just says, I want to reach out to the Russian side. All the while he's been funding the Ukrainian side. See, it just doesn't make any sense to negotiate in those kind of situations. Now, if you said, hey, I want, I'm hoping you guys can get together, Putin, Zelensky, let's put you guys together. Let me be in the room to help. Now, that makes sense. Now what we hear on the eve of Trump meeting with Putin is that, hey, there's going to be a second summit. We're just kind of setting the stage for the second meeting, and Zelensky might be involved in the second one. Well, how am I going to feel if I'm Zelensky and I'm invited to the second meeting? In other words, they've hammered out 90% of the agreement, and now they just kind of want to get me on board. I'm kind of feeling like I'm the last important guy or the least important guy in the room, right? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense for me. I don't know how to respond to it, really. Because the headline right now says this: Putin praises Trump on eve of summit. Okay. Now, I realize that Putin is very brilliant, too. If there's an equal in the world with Trump, or maybe beyond, it would be Vladimir Putin. Very savvy in the media, very cautious, right? Very wise, very savvy, the guy used to be with KGB, right? So it's not like this guy's a nobody. Well, anyway, I bring this up because Putin praises Trump on eve of summit. What a great way for Putin to start out the discussion by praising Trump. Now, you can say it's mock praise. You can say it's genuine praise. You know, back in the day, the Democrats tried to say that they had this incredible relationship that was, well, smacked of election fraud. That turned out to be completely 100% bogus. But I think Trump would be better to get Zelensky and the Russian leader in the room. I just think this negotiation between, sovereign nations ought not happen leaving out one of the key groups, meaning the Ukraine, Zelensky. And what's interesting to me is, why would the Russian president meet with Donald Trump? Why would they meet with the United States to try to stop the war when we've been funding the other side? Anyway, I think that if we're not very careful, Trump is the art of the deal guy, but he might get owned by Vladimir Putin. He's not meeting with some, whatever. I think Vladimir is going to basically have some big, bold statements. They might be wise enough to come up with something short-term that looks good, but I don't really see it going very well, because I don't believe that you're negotiating from an honest point of view. Right? I just don't see that you're negotiating in great faith when you're literally arming and funding the other side, and when you're threatening to literally lob missiles straight into the heart of Russia. I just think somehow that's just a mistaken position to argue from. I don't see any way that you can make me think it's going to go well like that. I don't get it. So I don't know what's going to happen behind the scenes. Again, we're not going to really get, they're going to basically have, I'm sure, a couple public photos and pictures and da-da-da tomorrow. But you're not going to get the real scoop of what they really talk about, or what really went down, or who really won or lost that kind of negotiation, or whatever else. Right? So we need to be very, very careful about, our assessment of this. I just know this. Why are we even the guys to meet with? Why should Putin sit down with Trump over the Ukraine in the first place? Why should the United States pick sides and fund to the tune of billions of dollars the Ukraine? I mean, right now we're on the cusp of losing that whole thing. I know a lot of people don't want to admit that, but I think it's beyond debate. I think it's beyond debate. So anyway, there you have it. I don't even know how to respond to it all, except we need to be very careful in these negotiations, because they might even seem good at the surface, but I'm convinced they'll backfire. All right, enough of that. I know I've repeated myself on this several times, but the reason I spend so much time on it right now is because we've got this short window. If anybody's listening, a very short window to try to decrease war, to try to really double down for peace, to really focus on what matters the most. And I kind of wonder, we had on a couple of days ago Dr. Len Baer, medical doctor. He talks about this homo interruptus, which is basically the Havana syndrome. Glenn Burr, md.substack.com, targetedjustice.com. I bring this up because if you're going to meet with Vladimir Putin, and we don't know how these sounds or how these events are happening to people, maybe you ought to ask Vladimir. Maybe he could give us some intel on it, huh? All right, hang tight. Liberty Roundtable Live.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So, in my mind, we've got a very short window to talk about this issue with Donald Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin. He's supposed to meet tomorrow, and the reason it's kind of a short window to discuss it is because if we don't discuss it today on the show, Donald Trump will be literally meeting, right? And there's an article in MSN that I find pretty interesting. It says this: even before Alaska summit, Putin is redrawing the global order to his liking. Story by Robin Dixon and several others. But I think it's a very fascinating headline. Even before talks begin, President Vladimir Putin, I guess he's supposed to meet at a U.S. military base in Alaska. And what's interesting to me is I don't know why you would meet at a U.S. military base if you're Putin. Because that's so one-sided. Usually in negotiations, you try to meet at a neutral location. And the reason you try to do that is because you don't want somebody to kind of feel like they have the upper hand. Hey, you're on my turf, or you're in my territory, or whatever, right? Now, I don't really know why Vladimir Putin would do that, but I think he believes he has such a strong position that won't even matter. Now, Putin set the scene last week after meeting Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, and he says, hey, that's Vladimir Putin, ruled out meeting with the Ukrainian President Zelensky until certain conditions were met, conditions that Putin said remain, quote, far off. So you could say, well, Sam, that's why, Putin and Zelensky don't meet. Putin won't meet with Zelensky until certain conditions are met. Fine. But meeting with Trump, either Trump has to deliver those conditions to Putin or he's got to extract something else. And if he meets the conditions and then Zelensky disagrees, we're nowhere. If he, on the other hand, doesn't meet the conditions but negotiates or extracts something else out of Russia, what will that do? Now, this is a power play by Trump in many ways because listen, Trump knows that the United States has control of Alaska. But in past decades, Russia has kind of hinted that, no, they really should have possession of Alaska. So there's a lot going on here behind the scenes that I don't think Americans are really aware of or privy to. Trump agreed to and dismissed Zelensky's attendance, even as the future of Zelensky's nation and the 40 million citizens hang in the balance. So Trump just decided to cave to Putin and say, yeah, we're not going to have Zelensky there, but I'll meet with you. But we're doing it on my turf, at my military base in Alaska, which I control. Now, I know that you need to play hardball with these leaders. I know that you need to be somewhat of a strong man to deal with the world. And I know that if you're weak, you just get run over. You get just crushed like a bulldozer, right? But he says this, Zelensky's been in a bunch of meetings in 3.5 years since the start of the, quote, Russian invasion. And nothing happened. Do you want somebody that's been there discussing this forever? Anyway. Now, I find that interesting because Trump has threatened and sanctioned and all this to Russia, funded the Ukraine. Trump seemed more conciliatory in a video conference with Zelensky and European leaders on Wednesday, so just yesterday. But you look at this whole thing, and it seems like we're just involved in this massive foreign entanglement, right? I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's wise to be that engaged. Now, they say Trump to talk peace in Alaska with Putin. It might appear peaceful to the American citizens, where they're just like, oh, peaceful Trump wants to negotiate. But I'm telling you, there's very wise counsel to saying, stay out of it. This back discussion about, meeting in Alaska pretty much puts that on the table for Putin to challenge or Putin to say, hey, if you're not very careful, it gives Putin a lot of wiggle room to focus on things that aren't directly related and use it to grandstand for something else that's not publicly on the radar. Right? Anyway, I don't mean to be critical of Trump. I just mean to really say we need to be very careful, right? And I don't really know that we're going about this right. I don't think so. And I say I don't think so because I think Putin is kind of redrawing things. I mean, Putin is gunning for something else. What's it going to be? When we come out of this summit tomorrow, is it going to be, hey, Trump got a peaceful win? We're on the same page, the United States and Russia. We've been funding the Ukraine forever now and picked Ukraine's side, but now we agree with the Russian president. We just need to bring Zelensky to the table and solve this thing. I don't see it going well. I just don't see how. Not because Trump's not a good negotiator, but because of our past actions that Trump's got to deal with. So if I was Trump, I'd be going in saying, listen, we need this war to stop. We feel like you've invaded. How many of these points of Zelensky's are you going to carry forward? Trump, You don't carry enough of them forward, you're not going to get Zelensky on board anyway. Well, then Trump's negotiating power is I can stop funding the Ukraine tomorrow, which is what you should have done a long time ago, President Trump. Or I'm going to keep funding the Ukraine that you say to Russia. Well, the Ukraine's already on a losing trajectory with Russia, as far as I can tell. I think Russia's winning. I don't think the Americans are winning. Remember, we've got a massively long supply chain requirements to make this war happen. Where does all the military hardware come from? Where does all the weapons and the ammunition and where does all that? We've got a long supply chain requirement. Whereas, you know what? Russia doesn't. That alone, ladies and gentlemen, almost guarantees that we will not be successful. They're just saying, hey, how do we need to handle the bombardment until they decide to give up and leave, realizing it's a failed cause. Think about Vietnam. We were there forever. The supply chain for us was just gnarly. We could never even win against those guys. You think you can win in Vietnam? Lose in Vietnam, but you're going to win in Russia? The Ukraine over Russia? I don't think Trump's position is very strong unless he just threatens more war. I'm telling you right now, threatening more war to a Russian president, a strongman like Putin, is not a smart idea. So I don't know what Trump's leverage is. I hope it turns out well. I just have my doubts. When Putin praises Trump on the eve of the summit and agrees to roll into Alaska military base, it couldn't be more hostilely favorable to our cause or our position by inviting them to an Alaska military base. That's the last place they should probably be meeting. It's too lopsided. It's too strongmanish. It's too in your face. It's too many issues that don't relate to the discussion at hand, unless you're going to say, hey, bring on the war, buddy. Anyway, I feel like I've got a very short time to kind of talk about this. Otherwise, it's like, hey, the meeting's already had. The die's already been set. But when Putin praises Trump, agrees to roll into that hostile circumstance, a military base in Alaska, clearly dominant by the United States. And then we read from MSN and other places, even before the Alaska summit, Putin is redrawing the global order to his liking. You think about that and you go, wow, what does that even mean? In my mind, what it means is Putin has a very, very strong position indeed. And you can say, well, no, Sam, most of the countries of the world are against him. I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all. Because there's really not that many countries in the world that have the military might, that have the financial backing, that have the advanced weaponry and to really decide what's going to happen here. What, you've got Russia, you've got China, you've got the United States, you've got some of the European nations if they bind together, kind of a thing. But who else do you got? You got craziness in some of these countries, but you don't have stability. So we need to be really careful. Okay, we're talking about great power politics in which big countries simply call the shots. Is that what we want? Right? Do we really want that? Yeah. Are they going to just divide power? Is it going to be a tit for tat? We'll take this, you take that, and slice and dice? The world reordering? Putin gets some, Trump gets some. What about the rest of the world? What about the peoples of the world, the peaceful peoples of the world? Do they want to see things just chopped up and directed by the big players? Anyway, all I'm telling you is now Europe is pushing Trump on Alaska summit. Red lines. We'll talk about that. The Hill, the Washington Post, everybody's writing about it. Hang tight. You're listening to Sam Bushman on Liberty RoundTable Live.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. Amid all of the back and forth over Washington, D.C.'s actual crime rate, the White House says no level of crime is acceptable. And now President Trump is suggesting that 1 month's worth of stepped-up enforcement may not be enough.
The president's takeover of the D.C. police under the Home Rule Act allows him to do so under emergency circumstances for up to 30 days. But he says that won't be long enough.
We're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days.
He expects unanimous support from Republican lawmakers and says any congressional action could serve as a model for other U.S. cities in clamping down on crime. Greg Clugston, Washington.
There have been demonstrations over the attempt to restore law and order to D.C., and there are questions about whether they're homegrown demonstrations or are being organized and financed by outside groups. The president says he will be in touch with Ukraine's president and European leaders after he sits down tomorrow with Russia's Vladimir Putin.
I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing.
Tomorrow's meeting to take place in Alaska. Inflation at the wholesale level heated up last month. The producer price index rose 0.9% from June. Wholesale prices up more than 3% from a year ago. At least 4 deaths are reported in and around flood-ravaged Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's damage reported this morning following storms that swept across parts of Delaware and New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Watching Wall Street this morning, stocks trading in negative territory. The Dow is down more than 150 points. The Nasdaq Composite Index is off 54 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. You work hard, you build wisely, your home has become one of your greatest assets. If you're staying put this summer, this might be the perfect time to put that equity to work. Whether it's funding a second home, helping your kids get their start, or simply creating more margin in your financial life, Mike and Brian at Fellowship Home Loans are the only ones I trust to guide you through it. They've done loans for my family. They tailor every loan to fit your goals. Fellowship is a direct lender and operates with your best interest in mind. If you're looking to access your equity through a refi or exploring a HELOC for some cash this summer for a second property, or maybe tackle those updates you've been putting off, start with people you trust, people I trust. Go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G, or call 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
The Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit legal foundation committed to protecting our unalienable right to publicly acknowledge God. The Foundation for Moral Law exists to restore the knowledge of God in law and government, and to acknowledge and defend the truth that man is endowed with rights not by our fellow man, but by God. The Foundation maintains a twofold focus. First, litigation within state and federal courts. Second, education, conducting seminars to teach the necessity and importance of acknowledging God in law and government. How can you help? Please make a tax-deductible contribution, allowing Foundation attorneys to continue the fight. You may also purchase various Foundation products as well at morallaw.org. Located in Montgomery, Alabama, the Foundation for Moral Law is a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 founded by Judge Roy Moore. Please partner with us to achieve this important mission. morallaw.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're talking about this Russian-Trump meeting, Putin, the Donald. And I don't know how well it's going to go. Okay? Trump might even come out of there victorious at first. Right? But at the end of the day, I think that Putin, and I hate to, not speak out for President Trump, but I think Putin already has, what do you want to call it? The premier position in this discussion. And you can say, Sam, how can that be? What are you talking about? I just think so. Right? All right. And let me tell you why I say what I'm saying. It's really important to understand this. Putin praises Trump on eve of summit. Okay? That's Drudge Report. White House not inviting Zelensky. White House, Trump is reportedly saying, yeah, after this first meeting, we'll try to have a, three-way meeting between Putin and Trump and Zelensky, and we'll do it at a European country that's, neutral. Right? But then the headline says, even before Alaska summit, Putin is redrawing the global order to his liking, MSN. All right? So, the Russian president has a pretty good power position right now. Europe pushes Trump on red lines in Alaska. So red lines meaning, what are we going to put on the table and what are we not going to put on the table, right? Kind of a discussion. Headline says, Russia bringing the big guns to Alaska. Trump bringing art of the deal. NATO and the EU is ignored. Now, do you think that's smart? I don't. I don't think it's smart to do that. I think it's very, very unwise. Why? Because whose country, whose sovereignty are we talking about? Answer, the sovereignty of the Ukraine, right? That's the problem with this whole thing, in my opinion, is, hey, what are the big guns Russia's bringing? What is the art of the deal Trump's bringing? A lot of people are speculating. No one really has the facts. But here's what they're saying. It's the Trump doctrine that Trump's going to bring to the table. What is the Trump doctrine, you ask? Listen carefully. Commerce, not chaos. And I think it's a great doctrine. So I'm not downing Trump. I'm just telling you it's a great doctrine. But why don't you, from afar, kind of forward that reality to everybody, that kind of reality check. It's the economy, stupid. I say, look, we want you to play in the greatest economy the world's ever known, both of you, Russia, the Ukraine, everybody. We want peace. But they say this, at Friday's Alaska summit with Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump will arrive with a deal that Putin can't ignore. What am I talking about? Rare earths, oil, so rare earths, so special, things that you get out of the earth or whatever, oil, and sanctions relief, all in exchange for ending the Ukraine war. Now, I know people are going, yeah, that's the deal, Sam, that can work. I think it can work on the surface. But again, it's the stick and the carrot. You come to Alaska and kind of humbly admit that Alaska's ours, not Russia's. Wow, very interesting battle, debate, discussion there being squashed. You then say, hey, we're willing to economically just ruin you. And if you don't come to the table, we will. And if you do come to the table, we're going to basically, get rid of the sanctions. We're going to work out deals around the world with oil. We're going to work out deals around the world with the rare earth stuff. If I'm Vladimir Putin, I walk in and go, okay, I stop the war. I get trade rolling again. I get out of hock with everybody and kind of, just back away for a while. But later, I'm a stronger man than I once was before. Because now that you got rid of all the sanctions, you let me, as Russia, play in the greatest economic engine the world's ever known. We've done that to China. We built Chinese military, people. Understand that very clearly. We built the Chinese military with our economic might. While we were basically thinking, hey, you know what? We love all this cheap Chinese junk for the most part. All these products. They were building their military with all the proceeds, baby. This massive trade imbalance for decades on end. I mean, even since the Ross Perot days, which is the early 90s. So what's that? The 90s, the 2000s, the 10s, literally 3 or 4 decades now, right? We built the military might of the Chinese Communist government, the CCP, with our own money. Well, we're about, and we've done that in the past, but we're about to do more of that with trade negotiations from Russia and the United States. And I don't think it's smart to go in there and say, hey, we'll quit these sanctions. We'll talk about rare earths. We'll talk about oil. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about that. I don't believe that you win economic wars with economic sticks and carrots. Okay? I just don't believe that's the way to go about it. If you really want to discuss the art of the deal, in my opinion, we need a win-win, everybody wins scenario. Is there an everybody wins scenario in this? I don't know. Some of these people are so hooked on thinking that they're in control of this land or this issue or that issue that people can't see straight. So, I would basically try to stay out of this war. And I think Trump's going headlong right into it. I mean, he's going to have a first meeting with Putin. Then he's going to have another meeting supposedly with Putin and Zelensky and Trump. And what's Trump going to offer to stop this war? And why do we need to stop this war in the first place? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want war. And I'm not advocating for war. I'm not advocating for war at all. But what I am saying is, if we're not very careful, while we've got Trump negotiating around the world, what we really have that I see is ignoring serious issues at home. You say, Sam, what issues? Well, Congress is on flat out recess, first of all. They need to come back. I mean, if we want to talk about emergencies in America, I don't believe in emergency powers because there are no such thing. But there's an emergency in America. Let me tell you what it is. Congress has not codified enough of what Donald Trump's done to make it stick. Trump's done a lot of good. But the first thing Congress needs to do is get back in office now, immediately come back in an emergency situation. Call them all back in session, Mike Johnson, and say, hey, we've got to basically find out, look, this Washington, D.C. thing where Trump is, going to have troops monitoring 24/7. And okay, is that necessary? I think that it is, personally. Is Trump within his rights to do this? I think he is. Absolutely. Can he do it for longer than 48 hours without notifying Congress? No, but he's already notified Congress. That means he has 30 days. He's now already wisely asking Congress before the 30-day expiration to say, please continue this. This is necessary. I agree with President Trump 100% on this for D.C. D.C. has been absolutely violent. Now, the Democrats and the liberals and everybody who hates Trump, the Trump derangement syndrome people that don't like the Donald, they're going to be like, hey, crime's already going down. That's a relative discussion. Yes, it's gone down since 2023 at the height of some of the murders and everything else. I get it. But it's up in terms of political attacks. And when you say it's down, let me just ask you a question. Let me just really put this in perspective. If something goes up every year for 10 years, and then the 11th and 12th year, it goes down a little bit, but it's still way, way, way above the start of the 10 years, even way above 5 years into it or 7 years into it, just say, or even 8 years into the 10 years. And then the 11th and the 12th year, it goes down to maybe you're at, You're back to like your 6 level. You can say it's down because it is compared to the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10 years. The 11th and 12th dropped it down to the 6-year level, but the 6 is way above where you started, which was 1. Let me make it more simple. If crime goes up 100% and then down 10%, is it down? Or is it up? See, that's the debate we're having. And these, in my opinion, intellectually dishonest people, they're not really laying it out to you properly. They're not being fair about what really is going on. They're playing games. It's way up, 100% up, and then it went 10% down recently, and they're saying it's down? Absolutely false. You're listening to Liberty RoundTable Live.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
Press 1. To change your message, press 7.
Hey, Mom, Dad, Mark here. Wow, I love college. Really. I never knew living on my own could be so, good for me.
To change your message, press 7.
So, here I am at college. It's cool. Well, of course, it's only been a week.
To change your message.
Hey, it's me. I was just remembering that time I hit my first home run. You know, through the garage window. Thanks for not being mad. No.
To change.
Hi. Boy, I miss you guys. I miss my room. I miss waking up to warm socks straight from the dryer. Warm socks.
Family. Isn't it about time?
Hi, it's Mark. Love you guys. I'll call you later.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
All right, back with you live. So I just feel like this is very unwise. We're getting foreign entangled, so much so. We're dismissing NATO, which we've been in forever. I'm all for getting out of NATO. Don't misunderstand me. But when you just sideline NATO like this without exiting NATO, you're kind of playing games. It's temporary. It's not permanent. Getting out of NATO is permanent. Sidelining NATO, all that does is make NATO angry and feel like, man, who do you think you are? Do you think you're a god or something? Okay, then you sideline Europe, you sideline NATO, you leave the rest, or the Ukrainian President Zelensky out of it. You meet with, Russia. You meet on our soil, which is already very weird that, Putin would even meet there. But Putin wants to basically say, I'm the peaceful guy. He's going to come across me like I'm the peaceful guy. You guys are sanctioning me for no reason. When it says that he's going to bring the big guns, what does that mean? Anyway, here's Trump speaking about this. And I want to make some comments about what he has to say. Here's the president.
Mr. President, will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say. There will be very severe consequences. Yes.
Sir, when you meet with Vladimir Putin Friday in Alaska.
Come on, guys, pause.
Yeah.
Do you believe you can convince him?
All right. So I'm saying, look, what do you mean there's going to be consequences? Consequences for what? For not ending a war? I thought over and over and over they said it's not our war. Why would we put consequences in place? See, we're picking sides. We're not putting consequences in place for the Ukraine, are we? So it's very strange how this is working. Go ahead.
To stop targeting civilians in Ukraine.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've had that conversation with him. I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the street. So I guess the answer to that is no, because I've had this conversation. I want to end the war. It's Biden's war, but I want to end it. I'll be very proud to end this war along with the 5 other wars I ended.
Along with the 5 other wars I ended? I don't know what 5 wars he ended. But I also know that he says, I want to end the war. What war? Well, it's Biden's war. Well, if Biden was at war and Congress never declared war, then Biden's a war criminal. Let me say that again. The Congress decides if we're at war or not the president. And if Biden started or got involved in a war without congressional authority or approval, either it's a war or it's not. And if it's a war, it must be declared. Go read your Constitution. So I've got problems with this. And then the next question becomes, if it's Biden's war, Trump, why are you funding the Ukrainian side of the war? Why are you carrying out Biden's continued funding? So I don't mean to attack the president on this. I agree that President Trump wants peace, and I think we all want peace. And I think peace is a good goal. Don't misunderstand me. It's a great goal. But I'm not really seeing that the positions we're taking make sense. You start the meeting by saying we're going to meet in Alaska, a disputed territory. We're going to meet in our military base. You're dealing with a strong man, militarily speaking, that comes from the KGB, and you're going to put him in our military base. You're going to leave Zelensky out of the deal. You're going to sideline NATO. You're going to sideline the European, members of it. Okay. The world's all with me, but nobody's with me, but I'm going to meet with him. And yeah, there'll be consequences if he doesn't do what I want. All right. Let's hear the rest of this.
But I guess the answer to that is probably no, because I would have had a good conversation with Vladimir. I knew him very well. I got along with him great, actually. We had I had to go through the Russia hoax. And it was a strain on the relationship. I actually told him, I said, they got this phony investigation going on, Russia, totally phony, created by Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff, and Hillary Clinton and the whole group of them. And it made it very dangerous for our country because I was unable to really deal with Russia the way we should have been. I'm looking at Pam because I hope something's going to be done about it. These people put our country at great danger. And Adam Schiff, it was all made up. It was a hoax. The Mueller report came out. They all hated me. They had 18 Trump haters. And they said I did nothing wrong. They couldn't believe, they couldn't find anything after years of investigation. It was all a hoax. It was a hoax created by the Democrats, but in particular Schiff and Crooked Hillary, the whole group. And now we've learned all the stuff that's come out over the last 2 months is incredible through intelligence. And hopefully something's going to happen with it. These are people that put our country in danger, in real danger.
All right, here's what I don't understand. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine. We're talking about, are there going to be consequences for Russia? What about asking, are there going to be consequences for Ukraine? Because I thought Trump just said, over the last couple of days, hey, I've already met with the Ukrainian leader several times and it doesn't do any good, so he's not coming to this one. Why would I meet with a guy that's been at this for 3.5 years and not got anything done? Okay. If you're Trump and you're saying all that stuff, and it's about the Ukraine and Russia war, and you want that war to stop, how did we just spend, I don't know, in that clip? How long is the clip? 50-something seconds? How long is it, Liz? And 2/3 of it? All right, it's 2 minutes and 12 seconds long. A little bit of it was spent on the Trump-Russia deal and the Ukraine. That's what the reporter asked. But what it turned into, and this is the problem that I'm having, what it turned into was Donald telling you how horrible Hillary Clinton is. Well, I thought he was going to lock her up first go round. That was back in 2016, 9 years ago. He was chanting with the crowd, lock her up, and then he decided not to lock her up. Now he says, oh, Clinton's horrible. Schiff is horrible. He doesn't even mention Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Obama was the one with the authority and the power that did a lot of these things. Hillary would have been shut down if it wasn't for Barack carrying the ball for Hillary. Okay, but again, how come it's all of a sudden about Trump and the Russian hoax? And I had a great relationship with Vladimir. Somehow everything seems to be turned around to things that, in my humble opinion, don't make any sense. It doesn't make sense to discuss Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and the Russian hoax right now. You say, yeah, it does, Sam. We want to get those people. They're criminals. I get it. When are we going to see arrests? We've been talking about it for 9 years straight. You say, well, Sam, the Republicans just got in power 7 months ago. Oh, yeah? It's over 8 months now. We're closing in on 9 months, people. And Congress hasn't finished their investigation. And what about the 4 years before that? See, Biden took office 4 years. For 4 years, I get it. But Trump had 4 years before that he could have basically said, hey, this Russian hoax is a scandal. Let's get to the bottom of it. What happened there? So why 9 years later, when we want to talk about this incredible meeting between Putin and Trump, the decrease of war that Zelensky's not even fairly involved in, everybody else has been sidelined, and it turns into a Trump fest. Oh, yeah, hey, they were, man, it really ruined my relationship. I could have got so much more done with the Russian president if it were, not for the Democrats. And see, we're always infighting between the two parties. We've been attacking Hillary for literally 10 years now. 2015, Trump rolls down the escalator or whatever it was, 2016, whenever. I don't exactly remember when he went down the escalator. I'd have to look it up. But 10 years ago, approximately. And that scandal unfolded then under Barack's leadership and under Hillary Clinton's leadership and involvement. 10 years later, we're going, yeah, there's really bad guys there. Man, we just released a couple of information over the last couple of days. It's really horrible. I'm looking at Pam Bondi over here. I hope they get them. I hope they lock them up. They're bad guys. What? Who's worse? Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, or Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama? I mean, you said they created ISIS, right? So I don't even know who's who anymore. And these battles, it's all misdirection. It's all misdirection, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm saying to you this. I've got a quote from my son. My youngest son, is on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he's serving and teaching people about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he sends a letter every week about what he's doing and what's happening. And he had an incredible quote that I saw yesterday in his letter. And I want to give you this quote. And I want you to really think about the quote in relation to war, in relation to peace, in relation to what we should be in America. Rather than just bargaining with economics, rather than turning every discussion to how Donald's been wronged, but yet there's no accountability, even on his watch, for 4 years and 9 months now. So the last 10 years, almost 5 years of it's been Donald. You understand that, right? So is Biden a bad guy? Absolutely. Was the auto pen vote? Absolutely. We go on and on and on, right? But at the end of the day, half of this time was Donald's. And I don't see anything happening. But anyway, here's the quote from my son that I think wraps up this whole discussion very nicely. The Lord is truly in the details. Trust God. Specific prayers receive specific miracles. Exclamation point. Let me say that quote one more time. My son, John Bushman, he's literally like a 19-year-old, 18-year-old missionary. Okay, so he's a youngster. But man, they say that the words of wisdom come out of the mouth of babes. He doesn't know anything about the wars and the politics and all that stuff. But he's a young man on a mission that wants to teach people about the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. And so his quote, the Lord is truly in the details. Trust God. Specific prayers bring specific miracles. So when Trump goes to negotiate with this leader of the old KGB, I think we need to pray. I think we need to trust God. I think we need to realize the Lord is truly in the details. And if we have specific prayers and we promote peace, we pray for peace, we can have specific miracles. The miracle could be peace. But in everybody's talk about Trump meeting with Vladimir and all this different stuff I don't hear anybody talking about, turn to God Almighty. Turn to the Prince of Peace if you want peace. That, to me, is the real solution no one else seems to be doubling down on like we are at Liberty RoundTable Live. God save our republic.